Hey everybody, Akamatzu here, back with another thoughts video. This time on Fallout 3. I just got done finishing it and all its DLCs over on my Twitch channel. And so I thought I'd share my opinions on it. Before I get into those though, as I like to preface these thoughts videos first, with just my history of the game. So I played Fallout 3, I believe, around the time it came out originally. I think it came out in 2008. It was the first Fallout game that I ever heard of. Never heard of the franchise prior. I remember either seeing a trailer for it or it was at E3 or something, and they showed the reveal trailer with the power armor, Brotherhood of Steel. Remember, and I was like, oh man, that's so cool. And I played it back then, and I thought it was a lot of fun. I did multiple playthroughs of it. Did like an evil playthrough, good playthrough. And then I did the first two DLCs, but I never did the final three DLCs, the Broken Steel, Point Lookout, and Mothership Zeta, which I were able to play for the first time this time around. While we also went this time around and did all the side quests in the game. We did all the main storyline quests. We saw like a bunch of the multiple routes this time. So I got to re-experience the stuff that I did a long time ago and also the new stuff. So I do have some things written down here. So I think I'll just start with like what I liked about the game, what I didn't like about the game, and then the individual DLCs. To start off with the good, I think the atmosphere in this game is very nice. And I think I might be a bit biased in that regard too, as well, as the setting of this game is actually taking place in a place that I've actually lived at before. The same way I say the same thing about Watch Dogs 1, which takes place in Chicago, and I used to live there. So I find it fascinating. I used to live in this place as well, so a lot of the names and locations that you visit in this game, I've been to in real life. So it's kind of cool. I have like I guess a little extra to it. So I'm like, oh man, this is what this looks like in this game and stuff. So it's pretty interesting to me just to walk around places that I've walked around in person and stuff. But outside of that, I think that just the overall atmosphere of it is pretty great. Like, DC has been the DC area, Virginia and Maryland has been hit hard, right, with nukes and stuff, and is very bleak. There's not a whole lot here. The game establishes that, like, if the Brotherhood didn't come in 20-ish years ago and establish order in the region, this place would be overrun with super mutants and chaos and stuff like that. So it's very bleak. It's very unstable, right? And you see that. There's not that many towns in it. There's like 4 towns, really? Megaton, River City, Paradise Falls, and I'm forgetting one off the top of my head. But there's not many established cities in this game. And you really get to see it. Like, most of it's just the capital wasteland. And I think it fits it pretty well. I think they nailed the atmosphere in it. Another part of the atmosphere is Three Dog the DJ. Now, I've only played Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. Oh, since playing this the first time, I have played Fallout 4 to, like, completion and back again. I've done everything in that game. So I do have, like, a nice comparative experience now. I can compare it to another Fallout game. And so with the DJ, Three Dog is still remains king to me in terms of disc jockeys on the radio. He miles above Travis, even when Travis gets his confidence. Three Dog's just so enjoyable to me. He adds so much to the game. Him commenting on everything you do, which is pretty nice, having multiple things to say. To me, he's so likable. And the fact that you can kill him and change that stuff, which I did for the very first time in this, was hilarious. What the lady says about what you did, it's absolutely hilarious. But he just adds so much atmosphere to the game. Combined with the music and everything, I just think they did a job well done with it. I do think it'd be kind of in the bad, but also kind of in the good. I do kind of like the story and what they do with it. You trying to chase your dad and find your dad. I don't really mind it all that well. I know there's a meme in Fallout games, especially 3 and 4, of like, find your dad, find your son, find da-da-da-da-da. I don't really mind it that much. I quite enjoy it. But then the part I don't like is how you find him and then he just immediately is gone, which kind of doesn't feel that great, unfortunately. And then there's also story beats, like serious moments that kind of happen. And then it doesn't really feel like there's like really any conclusion. They just happen and then that's it. There's no real talking about them. You know, it kind of just moves on without ever really mentioning them again, which is kind of weird. I would say I probably never really noticed that before, but now it kind of sticks out now that I'm older and I can really notice that kind of stuff. It's kind of strange how things just kind of end and people move on and don't mention certain things anymore. A little strange, but you know, I kind of enjoy the trying to find your dad. Also, the fact that your dad's voiced by Liam Neeson is really nice. His acting's really great. President Eden's acting is really great with his voice actor. There's a lot of nice voice actors in this game. And I do like the story dynamic with the Brotherhood of Steel, how the Brotherhood have kind of gone rogue a bit from their main dedicated mission. Now, without having played like the early Fallout games, and I know very little of them, it seems like this one, they establish it well that this one's not going the status quo of what they would be. And I kind of like that idea where Elder Alliance like kind of grows a conscience and he wants to help the people and it creates this dynamic between the Brotherhood. And it kind of invites the player to be able to experience Bethesda versus old Brotherhood members. Like you have a faction that kind of represents the old way of the Brotherhood by the old devs. And then Bethesda can kind of, in a way, represent Lion's Brotherhood with the new devs in a way, right? And it kind of gives you, the new player, if they haven't played the old games, like me, a little understanding of kind of like how the Brotherhood was in the games prior. So I thought that was actually quite cool. What was quite cool that I hadn't noticed before, and I wouldn't have noticed on my first playthrough because it didn't exist at the time, was the Easter eggs, or the now Easter eggs. They wouldn't have been considered Easter eggs back then, of future games to come. With Fallout 76 being a game, and you can go into the Citadel and read on the terminal the Fallout 76 and what it's all about, and that became a game right after Fallout 4. That was pretty cool to see. And then the Commonwealth with Fallout 4 and the Replica Man, and how that becomes, you know, a big part of Fallout 4 and the reoccurring characters from this game that go in the Fallout 4. But you get to see how it all kind of starts a little bit in this. That was actually really neat. And it makes you wonder, is that going to happen again in the future? Are they going to take like a little thing that they talked about in Fallout 4 and then turn that into its own game whenever they get around to the next game in 2099 when we're all bones? I thought that was really neat. You know, you wouldn't have ever guessed that a quest would turn into a full-fledged game, really. But it was really cool to see how it all got started. And there's a bunch of little things in this that way, with like Madison Lee, Liberty Prime, all kinds of things that just become a bit bigger in the later games. And it's really cool to see that grow in this game, or from this game to the other games. One last thing, and I think it's actually pretty important, and I talked about it prior to this. I think it's important to say. So I played this without any mods, no unofficial patch, no anything. And Bethesda has a reputation for their games being a buggy mess, unstable. I know from my own experience with my 1,000+ hours in Fallout 4, the game's fun, but the game is hella unstable. All kinds of problems. And this game, without mods, now I know people are going to have a different experience, different components, different hardware, etc., etc. My playthrough was like 162 hours. My game crashed under 10 times. I was able to go like 81 hours with just 2 crashes. Once that second crash happened, it opened up the floodgates for more to happen, it seemed. But it was pretty smooth up until then, which is pretty surprising to me. I mentioned before that in Fallout 4, my game was crashing like every hour. I had to download a mod to auto-save my game on crash in that game because it got so bad after a while. It was pretty annoying. Didn't really happen that much in this game. We ran into 2 quests bugging out, which was at the Republic of Dave, where his unmarked quest, an NPC was just stuck and it wouldn't allow us to proceed forward. But luckily enough for us, a console command fixed that. So benefits of playing on PC. And then the mothership Zeta bugged out probably the worst out of anything. It just wouldn't let us like advance to other levels in the game and stuff like that. And I had to use console commands to go forward. But then me simply restarting the game and then everything just worked fine. So I didn't have to really download a mod for that too. And that was like the most game breaking stuff, really. It was pretty relatively smooth. Other than that, we had like hilarious ragdoll stuff happen, which is always going to happen. Sometimes some enemies would just not take damage, even though you clearly hit them. Whether it was with a grenade, melee, it didn't matter. Sometimes it just wouldn't take damage. There was this weird thing in VATS going on where if you did VATS really close to an enemy, like in their face, you would do less damage than if you would be like a couple feet away from them or a couple steps away from them. That was also strange. Didn't really make any sense. But all that stuff is not really game breaking, and it was surprisingly really smooth without any mods. I was pleasantly surprised how smooth it ran. Considering when I played this on PC for the first time a couple years ago on Windows 7, like the beginning of Operation Anchorage just wouldn't even work. I had to download a mod to get it to work completely. I didn't have to do that this time. So I don't know what's changed between then, and I was quite surprised. So that was nice. And I think I have to say that because these games are notoriously bug fests. All right, now, that was all the good. I do want to move on to my cons on this game. And sadly, I didn't think I would have these cons because this is a game that I would consider would be one of my favorite games of all time prior to this list. I'd say that all the time. But there's quite a few cons that I do have, and I think part of them come from my playthrough of playing Fallout 4, which I guess could be kind of unfair to this, but hear me out. So my first con is that I feel this game either gives you way too much experience for what you do, or there's not enough levels in the game, or a combination of both. I felt this when I played it the very first time back in 2008. The fact that the base game's level cap is just 20, I was able to hit the level cap, and I hadn't even explored like 1/8 of the game in this playthrough. Just by killing enemies, opening up locks and stuff. In the 10 extra levels they gave you, that didn't really even feel that better either. That felt like the level 30 felt like it should have been the default normally. So the amount of EXP you can get in this game from just lockpicking, passwords on terminals, killing enemies everywhere is so frequent. EXP from quests that I really feel like I said, it needs to either be toned down or there needs to be more levels. I kind of wish there would be more levels, which I hear they do in Fallout New Vegas, and that's different in Fallout 4 as well. But in this game, I feel like after a while, like I miss the chime noise that played when you would find a new location. Like I found the Deathclaw Sanctuary, and since I wasn't gaining any more EXP, I didn't even notice that I found it until 5 hours later, because I didn't get the chime, so I didn't even recognize that I found a new place. Like it popped up on my screen, but I didn't even see it because I was too busy just exploring. And then I don't know, it'd be nice to get EXP for like stuff that you do. In a way, I kind of do like the endless level system that kind of Fallout 4 does in that aspect. But I wouldn't call this terrible, right? Everything's a stepping stone, right? But I would like to see more levels in that regard. Secondly, and I think this is also a byproduct of me having more experience with other Fallout games as well. Sadly, I do think a large amount of the perks in this game are just utter trash or completely useless. A lot of the stuff like gun nuts or science that levels up your basic skills in this game are just complete. You don't need them. And they make up a good portion of the perks in this game, unfortunately. The fact that you can pick like half of those, like a lot of the perks, like 3 times each, I would prefer those to be something else. The EXP level up one, I would never pick that since EXP is basically infinite in this game. And, once you get the max level cap, that perk does nothing. I was really looking forward to the perks that they would add in the Broken Steel, but a lot of them were just kind of like not really that great. Like it was either, hey, set your karma instantly one way, even, or, make it neutral, make it very good, make it evil. I thought that stuff was just kind of bad. Find all schematics. I mean, these games are not really meant for you to rush them and search. So I feel like that kind of just goes against the spirit of the game. The same way I feel like Explorer goes against the spirit of the game too. Because these games are made to explore. And so most of the perks that they add in the Broken Steel as well, I didn't really feel like they were that great either. The new level 31 that brings your specials to level 9, which now makes it to where you can do a run where you can max out all your skills and max out all your specials it's nice. For me, like one of the only 3 I'd even pick from the Broken Steel. And just going through all the perks in the game, I had a hard time picking 29 perks that I would want to pick for my character, because most of them just kind of don't really do much, or they just get kind of set to the side by other stuff, which is kind of unfortunate. I think they handle this a lot better in future games. But again, this is an early game and stuff like that, and you get more experience as time goes on. But it was kind of unfortunate here. But it's kind of nice to know that they do a little bit better. That's something I didn't really, I guess, realize when you only had 20 levels to pick from. Another thing is caps, bottle caps, and unfortunately the system that it does on the game too. Money in this game is basically useless after a while. There's another game that came out at the same time that has the same effect, and it's Fable 2. If you play the game the way this game is intended, with you just scavenging, you'll never need money. There's if you get a repair skill, your own repair skill, you're never ever going to be able to use your money. And unfortunately, this has negative side effects in the game to where it makes exploration less fun, because you don't really need to scavenge when you already have a mountain of money that you can't even spend anyway. I mean, if you're not buying ammo for your money because you already got enough ammo, that makes your money useless. If you don't really need to use your money to repair stuff, it makes your money useless. And unfortunately, it just kind of affects multiple things, not really having anything to do with it. It just makes scavenging just not feel as great after a while. And I kind of really felt that. I ended the game with 40,000 caps with nothing to do with them. And I kind of just didn't want to search anything anymore because I didn't need anything. Because the game, I didn't think the game would offer me anything that I would need. I felt that was kind of unfortunate. I think that's another thing that gets improved in the future as well. I can't really remember having that issue, but maybe I did and I just don't remember. The magazines are something that also I feel like gets improved in the future. I think having 25 magazines for each skill in the game, which there's 13 of, is a bit not as exciting. I kind of like how Fallout 4 does it, where they make the magazines are like perks pretty much that you can find. I kind of like that because I think it changes the dynamic of your character a bit more than just leveling up a skill by 1 or 2 if you have a certain perk. And since it's kind of easy to max out your skills in this game and get 100 now, it kind of makes the value of the magazines not as enjoyable anymore. So I kind of wish they were a bit more unique. I think that's another thing I wouldn't have felt with the level 20 level cap either. Although I think you could max out your skills back then, but I think I never did that. So I think if I'd never played Fallout 4, I don't think I would have felt that way. And then I got 2 more things to add before I touch on the DLCs. This one is actually brought on by the DLCs. There is a huge HP imbalance with the DLC enemies, particularly the Super Mutant Overlords, the Feral Ghouls, and the Albino Scorpions, which are enemies that were added in the DLCs. Each one of those HPs are insanely ridiculous compared to the highest level base game enemy of their respected family. Especially the Feral Ghoul Reavers. I think they're the worst offenders, followed by the Albino Scorpions. their HP is so goddamn high that when you kill them, it doesn't even really feel satisfying because they don't even drop anything that is like even remotely useful for you. The Reavers will drop maybe some bottle caps, and it's usually like under 10. Going back to my point earlier, you don't even need bottle caps in this game after a while, so it just doesn't feel satisfying. The albino scorpions will just drop the same poison glands that you can get from a regular giant scorpion, which is for the dart gun, which they don't even drop anything unique, which just kind of makes them annoying. And sometimes those dudes can spawn in like threes on you, and it gets a little bit obnoxious. And then the super mutant overlords, they hit like freight rate trains, but that's okay. They're the ones that I'm the most okay with, even though their HP pool is also ridiculous. Because at least they dropped stuff like mini nukes, which I think prior to the game was not an infinite resource item. There was only a set number of them in the game. So now at least the super mutant overlords provide an unlimited amount of mini nukes, right? Or with a random chance of dropping one, which I think is nice. And I think they're the most manageable ones, and they're the ones that drop the most loot. So it makes taking them out not feel as bad, I would say, compared to other stuff in this game. So the last thing that I want to talk about before I wrap it up is the DLCs as a whole and individually. Like I said at the beginning, prior to this playthrough, I only played Operation Anchorage and the Pit. I'll give you what I thought about them before I jump into what I think about them now. So I played Operation Anchorage back when it released, and I didn't like it. Reasons being is it's pretty short and it's very linear, and I think both of those are pretty much anti what Fallout 3 was doing. Like Fallout 3 is a big, huge world that is meant for you to explore and scavenge, and it takes forever. And I mean, I think I finished Operation Anchorage in maximum of like 3 hours, maybe, where I could play the base game for. I mean, this playthrough took me 162 hours. I imagine back then I probably played it for at least like 200 hours plus because I did multiple playthroughs. So I remember not really liking Operation Anchorage back then. And the Pit, I especially didn't like back then, but that was because it was broken and you couldn't even play it. I played it on the the Xbox 360 at the time, and you couldn't even play it. It was broken. The floor texture wouldn't load in once you got to off the trolley cart, and you would just fall through the floor. They had to take it down and bring it back 2 weeks later. And this was at a time where this was like the second generation that I was used to DLC. Like they started DLC on the original Xbox, from what I understand, with like Halo 2 maps, which I think were free. But it was like the 360 and PS3 generation where DLC started becoming more common, right? And so I want to like be a little bit lenient because it's not like how it is now, where some of the like DLC story stuff is pretty good. But I remember at the time I didn't like those. And going back to it now, I still don't like them. Operation Anchorage, it hasn't changed. It still feels very short. It's very linear, which is opposite of what the game is basically about. You don't really scavenge much. It does give you an idea of like the Battle of Anchorage, which you can see on terminals and stuff throughout the base game, but I don't really think it offers that much to you in terms of narrative to the overall game. Not really. The characters don't really amount to anything, really. The story really doesn't amount to anything, really. What really amounts to stuff in that DLC is the rewards you get for it, which are pretty good. And that's about the most that it even really affects the game, really. It's not really what you do in it, but like the rewards you get from it. And I don't really think that's a good thing. Second, I would say the Pit has the same problem, where it is more narrative than Operation Anchorage, and I think that's a good thing. It really only has one open world part in the game, and that's in the steel mill where they want you to collect the 10 ingots, but then you could potentially collect 100 ingots, and that's like the only spot in the DLC that is even remotely like the base game. And it's also pretty short. So I didn't really enjoy that one as much as well. That didn't really change either. Now, I'm going to go in the order of how I played them. So I did the Broken Steel last. So I'm going to talk about Point Lookout, which is the 4th DLC. And Point Lookout I actually enjoy and don't enjoy. So one thing I think is pretty cool about Point Lookout is its obvious influence to the DLC in Fallout 4 called Far Harbor. You can clearly see that this was the blueprint to Far Harbor in Fallout 4. I think that's cool to see how Far Harbor was influenced by this game. I think the exploration aspect of Point Lookout is actually pretty nice. It's just like the base game. There's a lot of places for you to explore and get lost in, which is how Fallout is. And then that's kind of where it ends. I do think the setting is nice. If I forgot about that, I do think the setting is great with its like hillbilly tone. But then that's also kind of a negative because they introduce these new enemies in the game, which are hillbilly guys, and they're like super tanky and super hard to take down unless you use like items that are from that DLC. But then they don't have anything to do with the narrative of the DLC at all. They're talked about in like 1 or 2 side quests, and that's it. They don't have anything to do with anything. And in fact, when you go and you do the actual main story of Point Lookout, they introduce a new adversary to it, and they give it a little bit more of a background, and that's about it. Like the actual story of Point Lookout doesn't even feel like it's in the right place or the right setting. It feels like it could be anywhere, and it doesn't really feel like they're utilizing the actual area in the story. It's just 2 guys beefing with each other, which honestly could just be anywhere. So that was kind of disappointing because I explored for like 5-8 hours, fought a lot of hillbillies just to kind of find out that they had absolutely nothing to do with the storyline whatsoever. You don't even learn anything about them. And some NPCs say some pretty interesting stuff like, oh, the hillbillies tried to kill me because I look like a normal person and I don't have skin lesions like they do, which is what a kid told us, so he was hiding out from them. Or we met a merchant that said, oh, yeah, I trade with them all the time and they don't harm me at all and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I can't wait to learn more about them. And that never happened. A bit disappointing, I would say. It started off great, but then once we got to the actual story, I feel like it kind of fell a bit flat, unfortunately. So that one for me is about 50-50. It had really nice weapons, though, and a really nice setting. And then we played Mothership Zeta. I thought I wasn't going to like this one because this one was about aliens, which even for Fallout, I think is kind of a little strange. You know, it kind of works. The enemies in it are pretty tanky. It gets a little bit better once you get specific weapons, but they are pretty much damage spawns. I think the looting in the DLC is pretty weak. You pretty much end up picking up the same 2 weapons over and over and over again. And in fact, I missed a bunch of unique weapons because they just look like the regular weapons that you have the option to pick up like 50 plus times each prior to the point to where I just kind of stopped paying attention to the looting. And then I found out that I missed some stuff and I went back and I was like, oh yeah, I already had fatigue from picking up like pretty much the same stuff for like 5 hours. I do think that's kind of a bummer. And then I also think it's kind of a bummer. I don't really know how they would kind of fix it, but there's not really a whole lot of story going on in the DLC itself either. You get beamed up to a ship and your whole thing is that you just want to escape. The most lore you learn about it is like the people that they abducted over the years and centuries, which is actually pretty fascinating. Abducting people as far as back as like the 1600s and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. But the actual story itself is literally just, I want to get out of the ship. And then you never really even learn why the aliens are ever really doing what they're doing. I don't think I missed any terminals, and I think I got all the audio logs and I read them all, and you never really learn why the aliens are like assholes to people, why they're doing what they're doing, and that never changes. And once it's over, it's just kind of like, okay, I kind of wish we would get a why. unfortunately. So while it was enjoyable and it was very interesting, I guess I'm just kind of the same with it with Point Lookout. I did enjoy it, but at the same time, not really, which was kind of a bummer. I would say in a bit, but still, it was one of the better ones. I liked it more than Operation Anchorage in the Pit. And then lastly, we have the Broken Steel, which continues the after the main story. So I didn't remember this, but once you finish the main story, the game is over. You can't explore anymore. And so they continue past this. And it's kind of strange how, like, one of the options is to solve the problem yourself at the end of the game, which causes you to die from a lethal amount of radiation. But then suddenly in the Broken Steel, you survive, but there's no real even reason for it. And it just happens. And then that's it. And they just move on and never explain it ever again. Okay, fine. And then if you also pick that route, suddenly one of your partners is injured for some reason, which kind of doesn't even make sense again, but it is what it is. I didn't really know what to expect with this. And it's not really a whole lot of story going on in this one either. It's really just you bringing the fight to the remnants of the Enclave. It's very impersonal. It's just you fighting the remnants of the Enclave. You don't ever meet anyone personal on their side, and you're just beating them up and getting them out of the wasteland, and that's pretty much it. You do get a cool cutscene with Liberty Prime again, which can kind of be touched upon in Fallout 4, which is pretty nice. But sadly, after a while, I was kind of just going through the motions of just like, I kind of wish this was over already because I didn't really feel any connection to it storyline wise. It just felt like just here's 3, 4, 5 hours of just killing Enclave just because they're the bad guys. A bit disappointing for me as well. I think the best thing that this DLC adds for myself is it does have some cool side quests. There's a side quest that's kind of similar to something in Fallout 4 with the Children of Adam, and then that side quest annoyed me so much that I enjoyed it. And the 10 levels that it adds to the game that I complained about earlier with, I think, EXP just being too much in this game or there's just not enough levels. I think that's the best thing that this DLC adds to the game, in my opinion. Other than that, I don't really think the story is worthwhile, unfortunately. And as a whole, I put all the DLCs together. I kind of don't even really think that they're really worth your time. Not really. I don't really think any particular one or all of them put together is really worth your time to play. I don't think what they add is that great, if I had to say that across the board. And that kind of disappoints me. Or I should say, I didn't really think I would feel that way. Kind of sad that I feel that way because I've always wanted to replay this game and go through the DLCs that I missed because I thought that would be great. I didn't think I would play through them and feel, man, I didn't really miss out on much. But that's kind of how I feel about it. So can't change that. So I think that's going to wrap up pretty much how I think about the game. Still, I very much enjoy the game. Fallout 3. It was really nice to replay it after so many years. I did play it a couple years back, but I only played it for like 5 hours. So it was nice to replay it and do everything again. Like go through the motions of why it became like one of my favorite games of all time. And then it was also to just be able to compare it to another experience that I've had with another game was also a treat as well. So glad I replayed it. So